The main one will be the overview of the storage tank firefighting, which would take about 50 minutes. Before having a short break, for those I know some of you guys are working, so we'll give you all about 20 minutes breaks to get a quick bite. Before continuing on the LPG firefighting, and lastly, case study of major incident. So any point during my sharing, if you have any question, please voice out so that I can give my views on any comments that may come during the lesson. Okay. Okay, so about myself, I've been in 13 years in service with the SCDF. So I started off, doing my Rota Commander tour in Paya Lebar before doing my Rota Commander tour in Jurong Island. So it comes one big round before I coming back here again as a Commander Fire Station. So prior to coming here, I was the Ops Officer in the 4th Division Ops Branch and subsequently in department doing 2 roles uh, relating to planning. So in the photos shown below, the vehicles and the vessels, these are part of what I have done during my time in HAZMAT department. And the last photo over here is a recent trip to the US where I undertook industrial fire fighting training lessons there. Okay, so that's a very short introduction of me and what is my background. So now we'll start the lesson proper about the storage tank firefighting. Okay, so the scope of my presentation will be 6 portions. First, I'll touch on the background to provide everybody with some understanding and some historical background about large storage tank fire and how SCDF developed its capability from the early days, before SCDF was even formed to today, what is our current state. Second part will be the hazard associated with storage tank fires. So whether is it directly or indirectly, these are some hazards that for those who may wish to work in the oil and gas industry or who are already working in the oil and gas industry should know. Thirdly, will be the type of large storage tank that we could see in either Jurong Island itself or in mainland premises. And on the fourth part, of course, when we talk about large storage tank, want to know how we are going to deal with a fire that involve it. And fifth and sixth will be the post extinguishment concern. So that means after a fire is out, what we typically would look for. And lastly, on our capabilities to share with everybody what we have. Okay, in terms of background wise, Singapore is a leading oil trading hub, third in the world, and as well as the oil refining center, which is fifth in the world ranking. So this is, I believe it's no secret, and everybody's have learned this in during our school days about how Jurong Island was designed as one of the economic booster of Singapore, aside from our financial hub. So the economy generated by the industry in Jurong Island is actually quite substantial into our total GDP. So Jurong Island was designed in a way that from from the different islands, they integrate it together in one big island as a single ecosystem to provide integrated service for the different companies to easily trade commodities, trade uh, volumes of chemicals that they produce with one another. So itself, there's more than 100 global companies operating within Jurong Island itself or around this area. So may not be Jurong Island, it could be in Bukom or some mainland premise that is located in Pioneer. So these are some of the leading companies shown here. We have Exxon, Shell, Advaro, SRC, Bopec, Chevron, and SPC. And for those who are keeping track in the news, I know probably some of us may be thinking, say, Shell is probably going to be taken over by some other company. At this stage, we do not know what they will be doing, but this slide is still valid at this stage of time that Shell is still one of the big companies operating in Singapore. Okay, so these are some of the locations of large storage tank located in Singapore. Largely, you can see in the area highlighted in red, a bit small. but largely in Jurong Island, we have some in the southern island, pockets in the western part of Singapore, and very small chunks in airport, and as well as the north of Singapore, Senoko area. So in terms of the large storage tank that it can be found, in the non-industrial area like airport or power plant, these are there because they need large storage of flammables or fuel to support the industry. So, for example, uh, we travel overseas through Changi Airport. So all the planes who are landed in Singapore, they need to be refilled. So, you cannot be having, tankers going there many trips. So there's a large tank farm that store aviation fuel in that location. So similarly, at the top in Senoko, this is where there are power plants there. So it's in the same vein, they also require this large amount of storage space so as to produce enough electricity for the country. Okay, so this is a very condensed diagram of how crude oil is being transported into Singapore before it's being and kept in the storage tank and go through a refinery. So in our context, Singapore doesn't have any crude oil. So anything that is brought into Singapore is either through tanker trucks from across the causeway or through oil terminals where tanker vessels come to uh, berth in certain terminals in Jurong Island to unload the crude oil. And this then will go through the pipeline to the respective company who make purchase for it. So in some companies, they do store the tanks, store the content in a large storage tank, depending where they are located, before they are being sent for refining process. So inside here, I included some very examples of what a refinery will do. They have different kind of plants to do distillation, like gas recovery, cracking units, isomerization before they do product blending for the final products. And once this is done, they can go into two ways. One is they will go through packaging process, whereby if it's the final product is a pellet, plastic pellet, then it will be shipped out of the country for further processing, or otherwise it will be used for local consumption by the local industry. That's one. Another process where a finished product may be used is it may be sold to other companies through pipeline within Jurong Island to another company for further processing, downstream processing. Before it goes through the same process, it will be repackaged for consumption, whether is it export or, or local consumption or export consumption. Okay, so showing the very condensed flow of how the content from the storage tank to refinery and becoming a finished product. All these carry certain risks uh, to the local industry, to the industries here. So there are standards in place to ensure that there is proper control to minimize the occurrence of fire. So in the slide here, there are two standards that's being mentioned. The SS532. The latest version is this year. I think about 2 months ago, they just released an updated one. So this tells the company on what is required when they want to design a large storage tank facility of flammable liquids. So this Singapore standards is not just the authority that comes out with this standard, but this is a collaboration between authorities as well as the local players on what is needed. And the next standard is also on the pipelines. So for large storage tank, you must have pipeline to either take your supply or to send the supply to a finished product or to a refinery. So although we have regulation in place, fire still can happen because of reasons of by acts of God like lightning or through human errors. So in certain companies, they may have additional requirements to comply with their global HQ needs. So they may go beyond the Singapore standard and comply with whatever global requirements that their company have in place. So, for example, American company may want to follow the American standards. So there's nothing wrong as long as they comply with the Singapore standards. So now we'll be touching on the past incidents that of the oil tank fire that happened in Singapore. So the first, or rather the first one that happened is in Pulau Merlimau in October 1988. This involving a naphtha tank, which back then SCDF wasn't formed. It was still the fire service days. And from here we can see the number of hardware that was used to tackle the fire was inadequate, and they had to rely on other agencies for aids to tackle the fire. So similarly, in terms of extinguishing media, they are also inadequate to carry out. So they also need to request it from industry players who have this capability to extinguish the fire. So moving on to more recent years is 2011, whereby this is a Bukom fire. Although it's not a tank farm, but this fire started off from a pipeline that is located close to the tank farm. So in this case, there will be a video shown next. So in this case, it's quite a complex incident whereby the company is unable to determine the fuel of the fire, which led to the fire spreading quite drastically and resulting in some damage to the hardware of the SCDF equipment. So I'll play some videos to let everybody have a watch.
Fire at Shell's Pulau Bukom facility, its largest oil refinery in the world, has finally been extinguished after 35 hours. SCDF said that there are traces of fuel vapor in the area and that they are still on standby, while Shell confirmed that the leak has stopped. In a press statement at 11:30 p.m. on Thursday, Shell said that its consultants are on site to help SCDF and its in-house global fire expert in Singapore Friday to provide assistance. Shell said it is prepared to shut down all refinery units necessary, echoing the earlier statement on Thursday evening that it may shut down its Pulau facility by measure out the fire.
What we're trying to do is create a situation where we can focus on the fire and not have other distractions. So running a live refinery, a lot of other things that can happen. That really is our objective. So we don't have a deadline for closing the but we reduce that complexity. And if we reduce it to a level where we can concentrate on fighting the fire, that's our objective. Right. So I don't want to focus on plant shutdown because that's not the objective. The objective is to free our people to fight the fire.
The fire was confined to a farmhouse and a complex system of interconnected pipelines. The affected area, measuring 150 meters out a mix of hydrocarbons, of why the fire waned and grew at various times. This is Pasir Panjang Ferry Terminal, and as we can see, there are SCDF units here gathered to help Shell fight the fire of Pulau Bukom. Shell officials state that the incident was likely started by maintenance work, and the affected plants have been shut down. However, pipes surrounding the plant are still filled with oil.
Both jobs were ongoing at that time. Like the workers saying that they have seen very preliminary states involved. Really bolted it out because we want to learn what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again. Now, in the very preliminary stage of that investigation, we think that it has to do with maintenance job. But if I go any further and explain why or how for maintenance job, it's really pure speculation. because we have and properly investigate yet, but that will be immediately done the moment.
Fire started at a pump house on Wednesday at 1:50 p.m. It was brought under control by Shell firefighters within an hour. However, it flared up again on Wednesday evening. Thursday, explosion occurred at noon. 6 Shell firefighters were injured while fighting the initial fire, but they have been used. The SCDF has deployed 34 and about 100 firefighters to fight the blaze. There are also 400 Shell staff members on the island. Shell said the smoke observed is from hydrocarbons that are not fully combusted and not able to. Giant said that it is testing the air quality around Hong 4 times a day. It declined to disclose its monetary losses from the fire.
Okay, so after the video, I'll touch on the third incident which happened in Jurong Island. So in this case, there was a deployment of this special equipment called the large gun to tackle the fire, where it took eventually up to 5 hours to bring the fire under control. But having said that, we can appreciate, how dangerous it is in the next video when the tanks start to fail, or in this case, we call it buckling, due to the low level of content that's in the tank at the point in time. So from here you can see how the tanks start to fail because at this point of fire, the amount of volume within the tank is really quite low. So when the flame impinge on metal itself is weak against heat. So it will cause the tank to buckle in these instances. Okay, so moving to the last one is the Pulau Busing fire. So this is one of the island in the southern of Singapore. So again, our large gun are being deployed and the fire was brought under control after 6 hours. So some videos. Okay, so from over here, you can see that the large gun that is shown in the video itself is a high volume equipment that can throw large amount of extinguishing medium onto the fire. So itself, for such fire itself, we don't use water. Rather, we use foam to contain the fire and eventually to extinguish. So moving on to the next scope of the presentation is that on the hazards associated. So in oil tank firefighting, the thing that we are always concerned of is the three common phenomena, either boil over, froth over, or slope over. So over here, starting off with boil over, this is the most dangerous form of hazard that could happen, and this is a fatal phenomenon that could affect a large area of the tank farm if it happens. So what it entails is when the fire start, there will be heat generated. So as the heat generated, if you all can see, right, there will be heat radiating upwards as well as heading downwards into the water body. So every tank itself, oil is known to be lighter lah. So if there's water content inside, water itself by its property, right, it will start to boil at 100 degree before it becomes steam. So as the oil start to burn, and if the fire is not extinguished, right, eventually the heat will start to reach to the water over here. You all can see where's my laser pointer is showing. And when the heat reach the water and the water start to boil, this will cause this boil over phenomenon whereby the water becomes steam, and we will start to eject every content that is balanced in the tank upwards into the environment. So when this happens, the content as well as the superheated water would reach everywhere to the area, and this is quite a dangerous area for responders, whether is it SCDF responder or the company responder that may be there to tackle this scenario. So the second one will be slope over. So itself is rather minor. So what happens is when the tank is near full level, and when we pour presence of water on top of it, this will cause the product to froth, because when the water touch the surface of the content, the surface of content is very hot. So what will happen is the water will evaporate immediately. So is it in analogy is, if we are cooking, we heat up our pan while cooking, right, and we start to throw water, we will see the water start to boil instantaneously. So this scenario is similar. So when this happens, the water will evaporate, as well as when this happens, it will bring a portion of the content at the top over, and this known as slope over. So there's another more minor portion, it's called froth over, but this is very slow duration. So in short, this is a very overview of how the three different phenomena will happen. Boil over is being the worst. Frost over is a continuous release, whereas slope over is a minor releasing of content from the storage tank. Okay, so aside from the three phenomenon, another thing we should know also is the heat radiation. So this is where the heat from the fire would radiate outwards, and it will cause nearby to absorb the heat. So one of the concern from this is that you can have a tank on fire, but the neighboring tanks may have a flash point that could be quite low, and it may catch fire, or it may have certain uh, properties that may once it absorb too much heat, it will start to auto or combust by itself. So these are heat radiation. So there are other countermeasures that we will need to take to make sure that the neighboring tanks are being shielded through this thing what we call water curtain. So basically it's a layer of water to reduce the heat radiation from the affected tank to the unaffected tanks or facility that could be nearby. So in this case, for this particular video, right, it shows that the tank in Indonesia, it started off with a single tank fire, and because of the location of the tanks that is within nearby together, right, the entire barn itself will eventually catch fire due to the heat radiation that are located nearby. So beside those, there are indirect hazards that we also will need to know, and this is the presence of flammable or combustible liquid that is within the area. So in such a facility, typically we will need to use devices that are intrinsically safe. So in short, we cannot use our normal handphones or our watch. We can just bring to refinery, because our phones or any electronic device are not designed for use within the industry itself. There may be small or very minor micro sparks that may happen within the devices, and this very small device could trigger uh, an explosion within the facility. So these are some things that we will need to take note if we are passing by unaffected area. So secondly, the transportation of contents via the pipeline, they could be high pressure and be high temperature depending on the content. So these are on sidelines we will also need to take note indirectly. Although the pipeline may not be on fire, but these are things that we should be aware and where needed to work with the company to stop the flow of any content that is moving through the pipeline. And nextly is also whether there are other processing plants that are nearby that would be affected by the heat. Uh, and we don't want a secondary event to happen whereby toxic material or corrosive material from releasing because of the heat affecting this particular plant. Okay, moving on to the different kind of storage tanks. We have starting off with fixed roof tanks. These are what it means that the top of the storage tank have a fixed structure. They do not move with the content. So regardless of the content, the roof is there. Like a house, the roof of the house will never be moved. So in this content, they are typically used to store, products with low volatility. So low volatility means it doesn't evaporate too quickly as compared to other kind of products. So in terms of the shape itself, we can see whether it's a cone shape to allow some vapor reservoir at the top for filling operation, or a dome shape that could be used for cryogenic chemicals. In terms of other tanks, we also have floating roof tanks. So floating roof tank itself is typically used when the product itself would evaporate very quickly. So to prevent vapor loss, because any content that the company keeps, these are money. So what they need to do is to minimize the loss. So floating tank aspect of the credibility of the content that they are storing. So fixed roof tank itself doesn't mean that I have only floating roof tank, but nowadays more commonly used is can see a fixed roof tank plus an inner floating roof tank. So these are also common nowadays within Jurong Island. And for such tanks, they are being designed in a way that if there is a fire, such tanks, the roof will collapse by itself. So this is by design, it would happen. So as to allow, firefighting action to take place. So we have also vertical roof tanks. These are much skinnier tanks as compared to the bigger, larger storage tank that we used to see in the industries. And we also have horizontal pressure tanks. These are commonly used to store additive. So very commonly, if we have, example, a large water facility or reservoir, you will see this kind of tank, but they will be there to store chlorine compound to sterilize the water. And we also have this thing called underground storage tank. This, the requirement for underground large storage tanks again depending on the content. So on the right side here, which we see this is underground storage tank that is being built or is existing in Jurong Island. So this is used in the event there's a product failure. This would contain any release underground. So typically this will be a heavier gas. Therefore, this is built underground. Or otherwise, what we could see on the left side is sometime in our for those who drive and go through petrol station, these are what we will see, whereby all the diesel or the petrol are being stored underground for the purpose of aesthetic as well as against security threats. Okay, so for large storage tank firefighting, this is unlike our residential fires or warehouse fire, which are compartmentalized. So in this sense is that when compartmentalized fire, there's a certain procedure that we'll do, but these are typically minor fires. For large storage tank itself, the tactics that we use have to be deliberate because the intensity of fire is very great, as well as the action that we will be needed will be a prolonged one. So these are four things that we will need to take note. First is appreciation of situation. So what it means is that we need to understand what is involved and basically understand the terrain. So basically, you need to know what's going on before you can make a correct decision on what is the foam requirement, the water requirement, as well as what action is needed to be taken for the management of a large storage tank fire. So some principal considerations. So for large storage tank firefighting, we do not immediately try to put out the fire, unlike compartment fires. We need to gather all the resource quickly at the onset, and also make some assessment to make sure that there's certain containment measure to prevent the fire from spreading to the surroundings, as well as because anything can happen quite unexpectedly. We also need to have certain withdrawal plan in place should complication arises. So for example, when we are at site, our vehicle may be facing the exit. So if there's a need to withdraw from the location, can quickly get the guys to drive out immediately. So in terms of the appreciation of situation, the initial ground commander. So in terms of SCDF context, the ground commander can be our initial section commander, or it can be the duty officer, whether it can be the rota commander or the deputy rota commander in the absence of the rota commander, or even the commander fire station, like myself, if I happen to be there early. So we need to size up the incident, and gather some of the info from the companies. So what we will probably will need from the companies is what time did the incident start? Because one of the things that through experience is that when fire typically happens, um, there are certain premise that doesn't activate SCDF immediately because they have emergency response team. They may try to control the fire, but to the point that they know that they cannot tackle the fire, they may activate SCDF to location. So it's very important for us to know what time the incident start. Then following that is the type of tank involved. When the tank catch fire, we do not know whether is it a fixed room, floating roof, or what's the situation at the top, and what are the firefighting provision in place. For example, are there foam pourers at the top? Are there other devices that we can use to carry out initial containment? Thirdly is the diameter of the tank. This diameter of the tank will relates to subsequently on our application of the extinguishing medium to extinguish the fire. Fourthly is the characteristic of product. Because of the nature of the product, the concentration of foam that we will need to apply will need to correspond accordingly. So for example, if we are fighting typical oil, which we call hydrocarbon, then probably we will use a lesser concentration. But if it is a polar solvent, probably like alcohol based kind or anything that has the tier of OH, this then we will need a higher concentration to manage the fire should it happens. And the viscosity of the product, whether it is gasoline or crude oil, and at the point in time, what's the level of the tank. So earlier on when we see the video, we saw a tank buckling. Why it buckle? Because the content is little. So what if the tank is full? So the strategy that we adopt it will be different again. So besides fighting the fire, other things we should be looking on is when we talk to the premise, responder, we will probably ask also whether can we transfer the content to other tanks to reduce the products that is inside, and also whether any escape, whether is there any product that could have escaped into the bun. So all this tank farm itself, there's this thing called a bun. A bun contains a portion of the content of the that's stored in the storage tank. And what's the exposure? And lastly, we will need to know what's the wind direction at that point in time, so that we can place our firefighting equipment in the safest location. For example, upwind. We don't want the heat to be facing our responder when we are putting up a fire. So in terms of foam requirement, we will need to ask ourselves whether are there sufficient foam held at site. What are the arrangement made locally for more foam? So in Singapore, most of the players here are in this thing called optics, whereby they have a mutual aid arrangement between them into two groups. So among the two groups, they will have, let's say my premise catch fire. Under the mutual aid arrangement, the other company may send foam stock to me to help tackle the fire. That's under mutual aid, but separately, certain company itself, maybe because they are using foam from a same supplier, they may have a direct arrangement to, if there's fire, they will just bring over their stockpile of foam over to their agreed companies. And beside them, we also need to know who are the bulk suppliers. So it could be, local distributor that they carry additional stocks, and whether we can buy them ad hoc. And consideration also needs to be taken on how fast can this additional stock arrive to site. So whether through your mutual aid or terms of SCDF, for foam supply from other areas, how fast it can come to location. Particularly if the fire happens on Bukom, and we will need to take a barge to cross the sea to the location. Okay, so water requirement, this is important because we will need to have adequate water flow to ensure that when the foam solution reach the top of the tank, there's still some fluid there, and it's not when the foam solution reach content, it start to evaporate. So it's important to have this water flow, and if there's not enough water flow from the ring main, then are there avenues to supplement it through open water source? So open water source, for example, is if the ring mains are unable to provide the water supply for whatever reasons, then the open water source would need to come in, whereby we will need to tap water from the sea. Okay, so in terms of operation requirement, we are adopting the footprint method at the moment. So how this footprint method involved is in that we have a monitor here, and we will throw the foam at a particular area. So through this footprint method, you will start to expand, eventually cover the area. Okay, I have a video here. I will show everyone how what it means.
Very hot here. I can feel this heat. I can't get any closer. It's extremely hot, and we're waiting for the whole tank to catch fire. I got to withdraw myself a bit further. This is awesome, man. This is awesome. I think we should be starting.
From here, we can see at the side of the tank, actually there's this thing called drencher system whereby there is sprinkler located surrounding the tank and starting to cool the tank from the top. From here, you can see there's this little white color stream that is starting to pour foam into the large storage tank. So itself, this is not a huge tank. It's probably about a 15-meter diameter tank or so, but the heat that it produces is quite intense. You only can imagine if it goes into the biggest size that is available in Singapore, that is 110 diameter. So itself, for this, for a result to happen, it does not happen immediately because the foam itself will need to establish a grip in the large storage tank first. Once it starts to establish its presence on the large storage tank, then that's where we will start to engulf the fire, and it will quickly start to bring the fire under control.
How much? Well, according to my watch, it was well under a minute, about 2 seconds.
Okay, so basically that's the gist of how footprint method is done, and how, if we amplify it to a actual tank in the industry in Jurong Island, how we can successfully eventually control it and extinguish it. So for the operational requirement for footprint is of course the distance needed to travel across, as well as the amount of foam needed, uh, not only just to bring the fire under control, but also, after extinguishment of the fire, you will need to continue to maintain the foam that is on the content. Reason being is that the tank itself is hot, and it will continue to, evaporate the water that is in the foam solution. So there's a need to continuously maintain the foam integrity that is on top of the foam tank.
So a question,
In terms of the calculation, so for us, we don't, randomly say, I just whack the foam in. So there's this standard that we follow is by Williams Fire and Hazard Control. So depending on the diameter of the tank, we will apply the correct formula needed to tackle the fire. So in the first step is, of course, we need to know what is the surface area of the tank, and this is used by IR square, the formula. And after this, then of course, just now we had a table, we need to determine the application rate, followed by the application duration. So as a standard, by this Williams and Fire, the application duration is for 65 minutes. So depending on, there are different kind of foam manufacturer, different kind of foam that's in the market. So for those who are in the industry, it's good that you reach out to your foam supplier and understand what's their drainage rate. For this will also plays a part on how fast, your foam would disintegrate during that period of time. And for the foam concentrate itself, I mentioned earlier on about hydrocarbons and polar solvent. So today, 1 and 3% is what SCDF use. But of course, in the market, it may not be the case. There are 3 and 6% that are still used today. There are 3 and 3%. There are 6 and 6%. So what I'm sharing here is just what SCDF is using. What the industry using varies because there's different kind of foam suppliers producing different qualities of foam. There's that's needed by the different industries. And this is a complementary. If you have 1% of the foam, then of course you need 99% to be water. So correspondingly, if you use Polar product, then 3% or whatsoever percent that you use in your industry, you will use, the remaining will be water. So in short, this is a summary of what will be needed to guide us on how to determine the foam solution that is needed for the particular tank fire. These are examples. So for example, if I have a 46 diameter tank that's on fire and there's a gasoline, so my application rate based on the standard is 6.51 liter per minute per meter square. So from this, we will calculate what the surface area. From then, we calculate the foam solution. So in total, at 65 minutes, I will probably need about 700,000 plus liter of foam solution. So from this, then you apportion it to the foam concentrate that you need, as well as the water that I will need to determine the operational requirement. Okay, so once we bring the fire under control, the concern after extinguishment is whether the integrity of foam would remain. So that's where I mentioned earlier on, we need to continuously monitor the foam, as well as we need to use thermal imaging to measure the temperature that's on the surface of the tank. So why is this important to measure thermal temperature on the top tank? Reason being is that end of last year there was a fire in US. So what happens is that although the fire has been put out, there's this post-fire. So what post-fire means is that so this was investigation of the company that eventually burn or evaporate out the foam that is on top of the oil tank. So this caused the foam to generate a gap. So once there's a gap that happens or there's a breakthrough, fire reignite back. And once it reignite, the fire will damage the foam and spread, restart the whole damage again. Secondly is because of the prolonged nature of this fire in a very large storage tank. There's also a need to rotate our responders. As well, for the company, they also need to rotate their responder because people can get hydrated easily and go into heat injury. And of course, the resources may get damaged along the way for whatever reason, whether, vehicle run over it, people need to move in and out damage. So there must be enough hardware that is aside to replenish stock that are damaged and rotate the manpower needed. And we also, after the extinguishment, we also need to work with the company to secure the asset for fire investigation because this is important to find out how the fire happened. So similarly for any other fire that happens in Singapore, investigation will be needed to assess why it happened and eventually determine if we need to review the standard required for next time building a new tank farm or building a new pipeline. And lastly also the concern is whether we will need to continue to work with the other agencies to divert vehicular traffic from that area, maybe because of certain air quality issue or visibility issue within the immediate vicinity. Okay, so in terms of SCDF capability, what I'm showing here now, these are the legacy equipments that were used in the late 1990s until about 2 years ago. So there's the monitor here on the left side, the 2K GPM monitor and 6K GPM monitor. We have the older foam ports here. So the older foam ports, what it does is it carries foam concentrate within it. And the pump, the large storage pump here, these are pumps whereby we are able to tap on open water source So besides open water source, of course, this system is also able to tap on the company wing mains for water supply. So all these system, they are run using this yellow hose, which we call it the 5-inch hose. So it can take about about 1,000 GPM volume of water at any point in time. So these are some of the development that we have moved since then. Now we are using the newer system, which we call it the MOTFS, or the modular oil tank firefighting system.
Download that on the and to be in operation early next year. And it's one of the that is thing with the any great that we saw great. And this is the a lot of great. And actually what you know the state the lot of time.
Sorry, Keith, Eunice here. Eunice. Keith, Eunice here.
Yes,
Can you
ma'am.
hear? Yeah. The thing is that your video got no sound. Got sound or not? Are you playing the video here? There's no sound. You have to unshare your video, share again. Then top there you have to enable the computer share sound. Then the sound will come out.
Okay, so that's
How about the rest of you?
modular
Nobody
oil
said
tank
anything.
firefighting system.
Alamak.
So this is a past video. So today it is already operational, and routinely
But are you showing
the
the video with the sound?
folks from Jurong Island Fire Station, my unit, as well as other sister station from Banyan Fire Station and the Marine Fire Station, as well as our special rescue unit, will come together to train on the use of this system together.
Okay.
So
But
this, in short, is an overview of the new system. We have a very big, capability of the
this is the
monitor
new one,
here,
huh?
which means that you need to deploy lesser equipment to the premise.
Do you have the
and we
latest
have
PowerPoint?
bigger and better booster pump unit that's here, a bigger capacity of foam pods, and there's a new capability of foam totes. Reason being is most of the mutual aids from the companies typically send in this thing we call totes or drums to support the operation. Should there be a major incident, we have this submersible pump unit for open source unit, as well as the collecting manifold to allow the collection of the smaller 5-inch hoses into a bigger one. So the hoses that we are using here is a 12-inch hose, so it's much bigger than the legacy capability that we used previously. So in short, these are the schematics that this system has. We are able to tap from open water source over here through the open water source on the right side here through the sub pump, and before going to the booster pump into the respective monitors. So if we were to tap from the company wing mains, we will have the manifold to gather all the water supply into the 12-inch hose into the booster pump before going into the respective monitor. So this will be the video of how the setup will be in an actual scenario. Okay, so that's the end for this lesson. And anyone have any question to ask? Okay, later you
No,
must.
sir.
Anyone, if nothing, then we will go for a short break. And now probably we are about 10 minutes over short. Maybe we'll start at 8 o'clock again. If there's no objection from anyone.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
No, sir. All good.
I think you cannot hear us, is it, sir? Hello?
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Hello.
10,
Ah,
10, Shafiq. Okay, so
Can you hear? Hello.
yes, I can hear you.